Next on the agenda is Jack Browning.
Welcome, Jack.
Welcome, sir. I'm moving very slowly nowadays. Just had major surgery. From better. What's sore? Give everybody one. And she says I'll need an application, yes.
And I don't have another one here, but I haven't done that.
You can send it by,
Email, sure.
we have the Lincoln County, couple of the days coming up, September the 18th through the 21st. If you folks would like to have a brochure, they're laying here on the table. We would just like to ask the commission if they could help us in any way with some sponsorship.
Hey, Jack, did you get a request from the commission concerning the status and things of that nature?
Well, no. I didn't get a request, Mary told me about it.
Oh, okay,
Right.
all right.
You want one? Yeah, you want one?
I think you gave me one with the employer, yeah. Or you, I don't know.
Yes, we are a 501c3.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Anything else?
Jack, here's the application. I didn't.
Oh, really?
Sarah has an extra.
Will it stay the same or can we make copies?
Yeah, you can make copies, it's the same thing.
That's not like something I gave somebody else. But every year we have to get this from the IRS stating that we are, and if you need the audit, I do have an audit.
We would want, if you've got that, I think we'd want to look at it.
I have it. I have it.
Is that all right?
That's my thing, it's on screen, have a problem.
Since we've done that, we can go.
I just have one copy. If you need more, Mary, I'm sure can make it or I'll get it to you.
Thank you, Jack. Anything else you're needing?
That's it. Just come out and be part of our Hillbilly Days. We are looking for a mascot, somebody with gray hair and beard and bib overhauls and, man and woman. It can be either one. We'll have both. But we're looking for somebody.
Beard?
With a beard.
One with a beard?
No, they don't have to have a beard, but, some do, but, you know.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
The next is Josh Brumfield, the assessor's request for one of his employees, the mapper, John Falstrom's time. I printed off the,
Yeah, he sent us an email.
Yes.
And I just really had her put this on the agenda because I wanted because I was dealing with comp time, I wanted all the commissioners to be aware of what we were doing in Mr. Brumfield's office with Mr. Salstrom's time. And other than that, I don't think we, he's asked for approval for it, and I think it falls within the guidelines of comp time as far as the personnel policy and things of that nature, so I have no problem with it. We wouldn't need a motion on this, I don't think, as far as, or do you think we should?
Oh, yes, I think we should.
Okay, do we have a motion to go ahead and approve Mr. Brumfield's request for the comp time for Mr. John Salstrom?
Let me just read it.
Okay, sure.
The only question I would have is going back to what was pointed out to me earlier, that if we do not have a policy in place, we want to actually provide comp time.
We do have a policy in place.
It doesn't regulate as state law, as I
Yes, it
understand.
does.
What policy is that?
It's our personnel policy. Our personnel policy follows state code to the T.
Well, the issue was that we didn't do it in the past then.
But we're doing it right now. This is the protocol in order to receive comp time. The request is made. It is written down. It is given to the employer. The employer, then again, signs off on it, and this is put into the file. And this employee has 1 year to use this comp time. And no employee should have over 250 hours unless they are with emergency services, and they can have a total of 480 hours of comp time a year. But that is state code. But this is exactly how you do it.
But, and we actually have voted to adopt that. I
The,
guess I just don't
that
remember
was,
doing that.
I think Judge Hoke, that was the federal case.
Well, I'm familiar with that, but I
Right.
thought in the fall back here, at some point last year, we were unable to give anybody comp time because we did not have a written policy in compliance. And if we're going back to the Judge Hope rule, then we did have, and those people that earn comp time should be given that.
I think one of the problems was the documentation, whether it
It's
actually
the
been done.
documentation.
And
It's,
whether it was submitted to
Right.
the commission for approval.
it's hard to give comp time whenever you haven't followed state code. You don't know if that is true time, if it's documented, or if, if somebody's just erroneously writing something down. But this is protocol for comp time. And I move that we accept this.
Is there a
Well, knowing
second?
Mr. Salston, I would second it because I know he's an honest man, and he does a good job.
Well, I think that one of the reasons I brought this before the commission was this very reason, was to make sure that that we were compliant. And it's my understanding that this is the way to be compliant, and including all the documentation that's required
And-
to receive.
And all the other elected officials in the courthouse been made aware of this and how to go about it.
Yes.
Well, I know we made sure that they had a copy of the personnel policy back earlier.
And
sent
that's-
on to it, so.
And that's specifically stated in the personnel policy.
But we will, I think the commission, I'll have Mary review it to make sure that it does seem to be according to what we're talking about now. If you find, okay, go ahead.
I wouldn't just ask Katie, what about some employees that have more than 250 hours?
That's
Have
outside
we
of-
addressed that yet?
That is outside of state law. If they haven't used that time within 1 year
Mhm.
of whenever they receive that time, then they lose that time. Okay?
Mhm.
Now, the other thing is, do we have documentation stating that that time was approved? Because that's when you know when your year starts. It's either that or your timesheet. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So, and that's why we have to be proactive with our personnel files.
And along that same line, we have asked the Division of Labor to come down and address this with us. And they haven't done so yet. As far as the comp time prior to what we're doing right now, as far as how do we address that comp time that's greater than a year, that's greater than the number that it should be, and things of that nature. And I had talked with Judge Hoke about it, and he had asked someone from the Division of Labor to come down, and we will check on, and I think you've had talks with him too
Yeah,
about it.
he spoke to a Larry Walker, and I've spoken to a Barbara Gandy, and she was coming, and then she had surgery, and so now I haven't heard from her for a while, so I'll get back.
So basically what we're trying to do now is comply with code as best we recognize it at this time. And as far as the additional comp time that was occurred prior to now, we're asking them to give us some kind of a definition as to what to do with it. According to the way it looks in the code, I agree with Mr. Matthews that has to be done within that year's time as far as that I can tell. But we're willing to, because people have, we work, if they've worked and we don't know exactly the timing they worked and things like that, then they can make a decision based upon that information too. But I'm not willing to go back and take away people's comp time if I don't have some idea as far as, number one, whether they worked it, number two, whether it was authorized and recorded. So, and I think that they would be the best people to give us information as far as the best way to handle that situation. What we're trying to do from now on is to make sure we are compliant with state code and the personnel policy, and that's one of the reasons I wanted this brought to this. And I agree with Mr. McCann. Mr. Salstrom's, I think, is a very honest man, and I think Mr. Brumfield's reviewed this quite well to determine what he needs to work with, and we'll be bringing another thing up here a little bit later, I don't know, tonight or the next meeting, concerning some additional time that Mr. Brumfield's asked that Mr. Brown can work too, so, and help us get out of the mess we're in with our taxes and things of that nature. But I think this is probably the best way to do these type things when we run into them, and make sure that everyone understands that we're trying to operate this government as best we can to be fair to all those that work. And, Sheriff.
I'd like to have something from the commissioner, exactly how you folks want us to handle this comp time. I've heard different ways about it, and the federal, they rewrote this policy back when the lawsuit, what, 93, was that, what was KK?
That's our personnel policy.
Okay.
When our personnel policies
Yeah.
came to be.
And I spoke with Judge Hope about it, and he's, said we don't, if we change anything about that policy, that personnel policy that the federal give us, we had to go back and front on the federal court.
Right.
And he said we didn't need to do that.
Well, I mean, we are operating under that policy.
And that policy states that anyone that uses, accrued any comp time, they gotta take it as soon as possible, what the policy reads. And, you were right about the, 250 hours or 480 if it's emergency service, that would be including the deputies. But, I'd like to know that, when somebody, say that Chief Napper there comes up to me and says he wants, 8 hours comp time, am I more bad the authority to approve his comp time and let him off tomorrow? Or will I need to go through commission?
Well, this is the way Mr. Brumfield did this. I think it's best to make sure that you have documentation, you document the request. And then I think it would probably be good to make sure, because he's a co-employer. We are co-employers. And I think it's better to make sure that it comes to the commission for approval.
Right.
And then vote on
Well,
it.
that's
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Right, and that's just what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the documentation lined up, and every time, we're not trying to hinder anybody doing their job. Because we're just trying to make sure we're compliant, and you guys are compliant with what the state code says. And in talking with Judge Hoke, it's my understanding that, in the personnel policy, he crafted that after state code. I mean, he basically.
It is crafted.
And basically, part of it's word for word, I think, if you look at it. And it's my understanding that the way that if there would come up, a question would come up and we would have to deal with it at the time, we would deal with it. If there's anything out of that policy, we'd refer to the state code, which had been basically drafted, where that policy was drafted from.
Right.
And now that's my interpretation. Now, the judge, I may have interpreted it wrong, but that's what I got out of it when I talked with him. And the way I feel about it is, you can't always wait to the next commission meeting maybe to get it approved or
Right.
whatever, if something would come up that would require something. But I think that you should inform whoever the president of the commission is that you're going to have to do it. You would be that you're submitting this and that we can take it up at the next meeting. And that way, at least the commission knows about it. If it's going to be 100 and greater hours or something like that, I think these things really need to be taken care of. If it's like a planned time of working, like with Mr. Salstrom or things like that, that would be over a period of time, that we deal with it in the meeting here for sure.
Right.
If it's 8 hours or something like that, that you go through the same processes and bring it to us, and we'll approve it that way. But I don't think it's going to require, like with Mr. McCann's question, as far as, what constitutes it or how you document it, things like that. That's the thing we want to make sure of, is that we document all these the same way, and it all comes through the same
Right.
process. And, we may not deal with 150 hours like we would 8 hours or something of that nature, because I think sometimes that may get onerous. And we also recognize that in law enforcement and emergency services, some things have to be taken care of then.
Right.
So, I think that's, as long as we go through the process of documentation and approval as it states in the personnel policy, then we won't have any problems with it. I mean, because this is really just kind of getting us to where we need to be to go forward with it. And as if we do come into problems or questions, you can always holler at me or Mary, and we'll try to work something out in the meantime. I'll get hold of commissioners and things like that. But I think it's pretty straightforward, especially in your office. I mean, as far as your law enforcement and things, I think it's we're basically going to depend upon you to tell us what's needed.
Right.
and then we'll approve it and things of that nature.
I just wanna make sure I do it the way you guys want it done, you know, whatever you want us to do it, that's what I.
Yeah, everything is, as KK we just talked, you know, the more things we have in writing, the better we feel about it.
Well, I don't wanna make commissioners mad, but like Chief Napper.
Well, and I can assure you, the commission doesn't want to make the sheriff
Chief
mad
Napper and I
either.
got big plans for you guys.
Oh. All righty.